All right, everyone. Look, as I said, thanks for joining us. My name's Jack Faulkner. I'm the Manager of Communications at ISC, and I'll be your facilitator this evening. First, I want to say that more than 500 red meat producers and other industry representatives from across Australia have registered for this event. And I can see a couple of hundred of you already online, and more are joining as we speak. So, on behalf of the Integrity Systems Company team, I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to be here with us. Now, tonight is the first of 3 webinars, which are going to take a deep dive into various modules of the Livestock Production Assurance Program, otherwise known as the LPA. Tonight, we're kicking off the series by talking about animal welfare. It's a critical part of the LPA and something that underpins both on-farm practices and Australia's reputation in the global red meat markets. So crucially important to us all. It directly impacts producers through compliance requirements, market access, and increased expectations from both customers and consumers, domestically and internationally. So this webinar is designed to help you all better understand your responsibilities and to remain confident in your ability to meet animal welfare expectations and maintain best practices. I'm going to start by introducing the ISC team. Your presenters this evening will be Elizabeth Bradley, ISC's Manager of Policy and Quality, who will be taking us all through the Livestock Production Assurance Program. We also have several members of the ISC team here, many of whom are familiar faces to many of you. We're joined by Natasha Teddy, the Group Manager of ISC Operations. Xander Bennett and Will Marks are here from the Communications team. We also have Verity Sutter from Integrity Systems Operations, and they've all had a part in putting this together. The team will be available at the end of this session for Q&As. So if you have any questions about the LPA, animal welfare, anything we've discussed this evening, please have them ready so that we can give you the answers that you're after. Thanks to those of you who've already submitted questions during registration. We'll work through those throughout this session. For everyone else, please use the Q&A box to ask anything that you'd like. To find that, if you move your cursor to the bottom of your screen, you'll see there is a Q&A button. Or if you're on an iPad or other tablet devices, you'll find it at the top of the screen. You can click or tap on that, type in your questions, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of this. Just a reminder, we're looking for questions that everyone can benefit from, not so much statements, so we'll stick to that a little bit. Now, there are a lot of you already joined the session, as I said, so if we can't get to your question, all of your questions tonight, we will answer them offline and we'll include them in the transcript that we're going to distribute later this week. The session is being recorded, and so we'll also circulate a video link in an email to you at the same time, along with any other resources that you'll find helpful related to this topic. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin tonight's presentation. We're going to start with a short video overview of the animal welfare requirement of the LPA. And after that, going to be straight into Elizabeth's presentation, and she's going to take you through tonight's lessons. So please enjoy the evening. We'll look forward to your questions at the end.
Through the Livestock Production Assurance Program, Australia's red meat producers show that their on-farm practices meet comprehensive national standards. So what does the animal welfare requirement mean for producers? All livestock must be correctly handled by capable people. LPA accredited producers must care for their animals in line with the Australian animal welfare standards and guidelines. They must have a copy of the current standards and guidelines for sheep, cattle or goats and be familiar with the contents. Everyone responsible for the management of livestock and handling must have successfully completed training in relation to the standards and guidelines. This can be through the LPA e-learning tool or equivalent training. Producers must train any staff who handle livestock in line with the standards and guidelines. LPA accredited producers are required to have a documented animal welfare management plan to demonstrate how they meet the animal welfare standards on farm. This can be completed easily online in your LPA account. For more information, go to integritysystems.com.au.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Bradley, and I'm going to be running you through the content tonight on animal welfare, and I'm really excited to present sort of the LPA requirements and what that means in relation to animal welfare for our program. So as Jack mentioned, I'm the Manager of Quality Policy and Compliance, so I take care of the LPA program. The LPA program is something I really love, and hopefully you feel a little bit the same. The LPA program is our on-farm assurance program in Australia for cattle, sheep and goats. It really does that assurance work for us in relation to food safety. So when we turn our livestock into meat and eat them ourselves, making sure they're safe for us. What we're focusing on tonight around animal welfare and also biosecurity, which helps tie into tracing and traceability of our stock as well. LPA also provides you access to the National Vendor Declaration that you need to consign livestock through the value chain. And I just have a note there, if you're having issues with audio, you can leave and then join and it should rectify it for you as well. So LPA is really critical in providing those assurances for red meat and how we market our meat, both domestically for consumption and how we export it overseas. In terms of why LPA is important, it's a really big industry, right? $74.5 billion is really big for our red meat industry, and you're part of that. So it's really important to help underpin and continue to grow our access to keep marketing our meat and sending it all over the world. LPA is really important because your processors who end up processing our livestock, they require mostly that livestock come from properties that are accredited in the program. So it really provides that baseline assurance that they're really chasing. It provides that access to all of our global markets. There's over 100 now, which really puts us in a really good position domestically and internationally, meeting our consumer demands. LPA is also really important around protecting biosecurity on your property and then underpinning that traceability as it links in with the National Livestock Identification System, which is really important in terms of protecting and ensuring that if we do have a disease outbreak or a food safety incident, we can trace really effectively and provide that assurance. So we've got a world-class leading system here. Again, really key focus on food safety of that red meat as it turns into human food. And critical around animal welfare requirements to make sure our livestock are properly cared for. And of course, LPA is all around helping you understand your requirements and supporting you with resources, tools, learning, and providing that verification that we need in order to underpin and provide all this wonderful work. So tonight we're going to be talking around a couple of specific elements in the LPA program. We've got another couple series on different elements throughout the next sort of few weeks. But there are 7 different elements of the program, or the standards in particular, that you administer on farm to be able to provide the assurances into the program. So we've got 7 mandatory modules, which are property risk assessments, safe and responsible animal treatments, which we're going through tonight, stock foods, which we're going through tonight as well, preparing livestock for dispatch or your fit to load requirements, and then livestock transactions and movements, which is around NLAS and your NVDs. Biosecurity, and of course those animal welfare requirements, which were kind of outlined in the video that we just saw. So tonight we're going to focus on just 3 of these elements, which kind of tie into food safety and animal welfare as well. So we've got safe and responsible animal treatments first, then stock foods, fodder crops, grain and pasture treatments, which is a bit of a mouthful, but they're all about giving medicines and chemicals and using chemicals and incoming feed and what you're feeding livestock on the property. And then we'll talk around the animal welfare requirements in LPA as well. And that bit's not coming up on the slide, which is great, but we will get to it, I promise, in terms of the welfare requirements in LPA. There we go. And how to meet those requirements and sort of what they mean. So it's all there. We're going to go through it in each section. If you do have questions, pop them into the Q&A box. We're more than happy to help answer them, and we'll get straight into it. So we'll start off with safe and responsible animal treatments. So in LPA, the requirements are around making sure that if you are giving treatments or medicines to livestock, it's done in a safe and responsible manner. And that's really important to reduce any chemical residues in the meat and make sure there's no physical hazards as a result of giving a treatment. So this is really important for both food safety for us as humans who eat that red meat, to make sure that there's no chemical residues that are going to make us sick, but also around animal welfare. And that's why it's included tonight. So making sure we're giving animals adequate treatments, make sure they're protected from their illnesses or diseases that you're trying to treat for. So it's really important to make sure that it's done correctly. Also, making sure that the medicines that you have are not expired or inappropriate for that treatment is really also important, because inappropriate treatments can actually be harmful to animals as well. So they're the key reasons why it's important and why it's included in the LPA program. In terms of why or how to meet your LPA requirements in relation to this, it's very straightforward. Making sure that if you do have animal treatments on your property and you are using them, that you're storing them properly, you're using them properly and disposing of them correctly as per the label and whatever information you have from those products. So it's really important to follow that label and keep good records of that. Disposal of expired products is also really important to prevent misuse. It's something quite common. You obviously don't want to waste the product either, because it is expensive. So you want to make sure that you're making clear rules around what you're buying and how you're using it. Making sure people administering treatments are trained. So again, we're ensuring the welfare of our livestock in that administration. And then making sure if you're using equipment that you're cleaning it and calibrating if it's required before you're doing that treatment as well. Another important call out here, as it is a legal requirement as well under legislation, is if you have products that you're using off-label, so you may be using a product that's not approved for treatment in a certain species. Goats in particular have very few products approved. Make sure you seek authorization from your vet and keep a record of that. That's really important to reduce the risk of you getting into trouble, but also making sure that you're going to give the right treatment and not make that animal unwell as well. All of this ties into keeping really good records of administering animal treatments. We have templates available, which I'll run through in just a second, but keeping really clear records reduces your risk, especially if something goes wrong down the line. You've got your records there to back up, to say what you did and when you did it and what products you used. Keeping really clear records around batch numbers, expiry, the product name, all of that information is really important, including withholding periods and export slaughter intervals, which again ties really closely into your food safety requirements, because we are growing, making, producing meat for human consumption. Records should also include anything around if you are administering something through an injection, a broken needle in the muscle tissue, really important, because now you have a foreign object in that muscle tissue, and HGP treatments, making sure you've got clear records of that, and a triangular ear punch if you're using them in cattle. This is a really common non-conformity we find at LPA audits, and it's something that's really easily preventable. We don't set a requirement in terms of how you keep your records. This is just the minimum requirement in terms of keeping the records. So the records are important because you need to cross-reference those when you're completing your national vendor declarations and moving those livestock off your property, so you can share that information with the person receiving them. That's really important, especially if you're consigning direct to processing, because if those animals are still in a withholding period or an export slaughter interval, they could have a chemical residue and not be fit for slaughter. So it's really important you pay attention to those information on your products. We have lots of templates and resources available. You don't have to complete a chemical inventory. This is just an example of some of those templates we do have. You can keep them for veterinary chemicals, agricultural chemicals, or both together. It's up to you. If you have software that does this for you, or you have a different system that you like to use, that's completely fine. This is just an example. Here is an easy way to keep track of what you have, when it expires, and then sort of making sure you can dispose of those products properly as well. Again, it could just be as simple as checking the shed or the fridge and seeing what's there and making sure it's still in date before you use it. That's completely fine as well. Other records and templates we have available for you are actually the treatment record itself in terms of treating animals. So with this, one of the most common non-conformities is that we don't get good animal treatment records that we can then use for our NVDs. And we do have lots of investigations into these issues where records aren't right, and it causes big headaches, both for you and the processors and everyone involved. So it's as simple as writing down a little bit more information if you've got a pocketbook or whatever it might be and how you use it. So what we need to see in animal treatment records is when you treated animals, what you treated them with, which animals were treated, so you can keep track of, where mobs are up to potentially. Also, what product you used, and it's really important to call out sometimes if you're getting the same product but it's a different brand name, making sure you're really checking that label, because different suppliers of drugs can actually have different information in relation to them. So just because you've used something very similar for the last 10 years doesn't mean that if you buy a different version of that product, it's going to be exactly the same. We want to see batch numbers of that product, which is important in case your supplier recalls that product for any reason and you might need to give it back, or identify animals you've treated with that product. Also, any dose rates and who's treated them, if there was adverse welfare or reactions to that treatment as well. It's important to keep records of those. Key things as well is around your withhold periods and your export slaughter intervals and what date they're safe for slaughter, which is really important again for those NVDs and making sure you can complete those questions properly. Some tips here: if you are buying in products, you can actually ask for additional information on your invoices potentially as well. And that can really help with your record keeping in terms of making sure that you can refer properly and recording the right things. I do want to call out specifically around withholding periods and export slaughter intervals, because they are two separate but very closely related things. So withholding periods in Australia are the minimum amount of time between giving an animal a medicine or a treatment to when they're safe for slaughter for human consumption. So it's a period of time that you need to wait to make sure that we're not going to get sick when we eat that meat. The important part with that is that the withhold periods could be on the label or the product safety sheet, and that's important information you need to keep on that record. It's also important if they're in a withholding period and you do need to consign them, on your NVD, you have to put that in there if they're actually in that active period and when it ends. So this is how it all links together and why keeping really good records is important for consigning animals and moving them through the supply chain. Now, export slaughter intervals, while they're very similar to withhold periods, they're longer than withhold periods. And this is where some producers do get tripped up, and we have had issues of this happening where they've noted the withhold period but not the export slaughter interval, and actually the meat from those animals is going overseas, and that's where the export part comes in. So some countries set longer timeframes for certain products or active constituents in those products before they're safe for slaughter for that market. So sometimes the withhold period could be, say, 30 days, but the export requirement is actually 45 days. So you have to be really careful that you're considering both of those dates and recording them on your NVDs if they're still active when you're moving those animals as well. So both of those are important. If you're filling out your consignments on ENVDs, there's a little screen grab in the middle there that actually tells or shows you what you actually need to put in, the treatment date and the withhold periods, and ENVD will calculate those dates for you in the consignment. And then you need to fill them out manually if you're using the paper NVDs. So what product it is, when the withhold ends, and when the ESI ends as well. Really important to get right. Okay, so now we've talked about animal treatment records and how that kind of relates and the key things you need to remember. We can talk about what we feed our livestock and why that's important to both welfare and food safety. So it's a really big mouthful, but it basically considers everything that potentially livestock might want to have and might be eating. So stock foods, fodder crops, grain, pasture, and the chemical treatments that may be adhered to those. It also considers things like restricted animal materials, or RAM for short, which is a whole other category of risk that is something we definitely don't want to experience. So in LPA, we want to make sure that livestock aren't exposed to any feed or pasture or things that will give an unacceptable chemical residue in the meat tissue again. So if they eat something that's got a chemical residue, they may absorb that and have a chemical residue themselves, which again makes them unsafe to eat. Also, we want to make sure that they're not exposed to restricted animal products. Ruminants definitely should not be having those. So this is important, again, for the welfare of animals, to make sure that if they're eating something, it's not going to make them sick, whether that's a chemical issue or something else. And making sure that, if you're using chemicals on the property, you know when to graze those paddocks or those areas, and it's safe for those animals to do so, one, for their health and safety, but also for the food safety of the meat they may produce. The other component is around the restricted animal materials. So restricted animal materials put ruminants at risk of contracting something called bovine spongy encephalitis, which is short for mad cow disease, and we definitely don't want that. So ensuring that basic things around restricting access to those types of products is really important as well, because we don't want to experience that. In terms of how to meet these requirements in LPA, again, it's very similar to your animal treatment requirement. So if you think about handling chemicals in general on your property, they're one and the same. So storage, use and disposal, making sure that you're doing that as per the labels, it's all very safe and secure away from livestock. If you're using especially class 3 chemicals, you want to be sure you've got your recognised chemical users course. It's a good course to get done, even if you are just spraying and things like that, to make sure that your safety is taken care of, as well as you understand how to use it and apply it correctly. Ensuring that if you are applying chemicals to paddocks or grazing areas or areas where livestock have access to, that you know when it's safe to graze them after that treatment, and managing that paddock rotation so you know when it's safe to graze. Also, restricted animal materials that I just mentioned, they're things like dog food and poultry feed and your household waste, especially in relation to meat scraps or blood and bone products or meat meals or tallow, things like that, where if you're mixing feed rations for other animals or anything like that, we just want to avoid having any access to those products for your livestock. So straightforward in the shed, wherever it is away from them, is completely fine. The important thing, again, is around the record keeping. So same thing if you're using chemicals, all the information around what you treated, where you treated, when you treated, withhold periods, and there's different acronyms for the chemicals on pasture and grass and things like that, but it's the same thing where there's an extra day required for an export market, the same requirement. If you are buying in incoming feed, so hay, fodder, grain, rations, whatever it might be, making sure you've got records of those coming in. Again, that reduces your risk and you know exactly what you're feeding your animals, as well as any training records are important records to keep on hand. Your treatment records and your incoming feed records are important because you need to cross-reference those to make sure that when you're completing NVDs, that you're aware of those grazing and or feed questions that you're completing. In terms of incoming feed, in terms of your treatment record, again, we've got a template for this in LPA. It's in lots of different formats. You can print it off and use pen and paper. You can use it digitally if you've got software or a different way to do it. However you like to do it, we're completely fine with how you like to do things, just as long as it's got those basic informations about when you treated, what you treated, what you used, and so on and so forth. So all of this is relevant to make sure that we're keeping our animals safe and also food safety at the end of the day. Now for incoming feed, so you may be buying in hay or fodder or whatever it might be, commodity vendor declarations or a CVD, there's lots of acronyms, sorry about that. It's best practice because it provides all the information you need to be aware of the risks for the health of your animals, what you're feeding them, as well as any food safety status issues. So it provides information of any chemical treatments and that it's free from restricted animal materials as well. Now, I note that maybe you might not be able to get one of these, and that's okay. There's other ways to do it. You can also keep a record of anything you buy in and do a little bit of a risk assessment on it. So, have you been buying from them for a while? Have you got any issues? The other backstop is the questions on the NVDs talk about 60-day period in terms of what you've fed animals. So if you buy something in and you're not sure about its safety status, you can also just apply a withhold period of 60 days to those animals once you've fed it, to be sure that they'll be kind of clear of anything that was maybe in that feed. That does pose a risk if you're not clear about the risk of that and the suitability of that feed, but it is available in there for you, and keeping a record and doing that little bit of assessment really helps. The other thing, if you're really not sure, is you can keep a sample of the feed and just pop it away with a little record to say what it was. And once you're sure that it's not made anyone sick and not done anything horrible, you can then just dispose of it. It's just there as a safety backstop if you're really concerned. Okay, now we can move into animal welfare, which is the main headline of tonight's webinar. So animal welfare in LPA has been in place since 2017. It was introduced. So we have had some recent updates around animal welfare as well. But the key thing is that we have Australian standards for animal welfare as well, which are nationally across the board. And we have some for cattle, we have some for sheep, and we have some for goats. So each animal has their own set, which is specific to their husbandry activities and the specific care that they need. So LPA doesn't replicate the standards, we just refer to them. And through that referral is how we ensure that everyone's meeting those standards. Animal welfare is really important for a number of reasons. I've got some up on the screen there. Productivity, making sure animals are healthy, are more productive for you as a business. So better quality yield and outcomes is paramount for you. You don't want to lose animals unnecessarily. Making sure animals are healthy, prevention of disease, and less management. So you've got that, again, line into productivity as well. It's also sustainable and it's an ethical responsibility in terms of caring for animals. There's key community sentiment around animal welfare growing, and it's a key area where export markets and customers both in Australia domestically and overseas are asking for more information about how we're doing things on farm. So while you think, oh no, I've got to do something extra, it's actually just looking at what you're doing and going, I'm actually doing a lot and it's a great story and we're just trying to demonstrate that with you. So market access is a real driver for this, but also getting in front of it and doing these assurance systems means that regulators and the government won't come over the top and force things that are unnecessary as well. So it's a little bit of a proactive approach. Now, in terms of the animal welfare requirements within LPA, we have 4 requirements in total. One is to have a copy of the Australian standards, which are free. They're available to download. We can send you a link to them as well as part of the package for this webinar. The other part is doing training. So the manager of the property should have done training in animal welfare standards. So we have a free online e-learning course that everyone can complete as well in able to meet that requirement. And then if you do have staff on your property that are handling or doing husbandry, you can also have them do the training or train them yourselves once you've done the training and making sure it's consistent with the standards. So they're the basic requirements in terms of awareness and training. And then last year, we implemented a new requirement in LPA, which is around having an animal welfare management plan. So I know it sounds scary and it's another document, it's another thing, but it's actually just looking at and writing down what you're doing on your property to meet the animal welfare standards. And this is really important because, as I mentioned around market access and social responsibility and all that sort of stuff just before, it helps to demonstrate how we do it. And if we're in front of that and being proactive and telling a really great story because we've got all of you doing your wonderful management plans, that means that we're reducing our risk of people coming in and asking us for more and unnecessary information and doing unnecessary things. So it's a really great piece to protect our industry and make sure that our assurance program does all the hard work for you instead of being dictated to by overseas customers or the government having to regulate things that necessarily don't need to be regulated. So in terms of the animal welfare standards and guidelines, I know it's a very dry subject sometimes, but they were developed to harmonise livestock welfare across Australia. So this process has happened quite some time ago and they've been in force for maybe 10 years now. There is a review process that the federal government leads and the whole of industry feeds into it based on the species as well. So the standards critically across all of them talk about responsibilities of livestock in relation to things that you do every day. So making sure livestock have adequate feed and water, you're minimising risks, so, extreme weather, predation, disease, looking at the facilities and equipment you use to handle your livestock and making sure they're suitable and in good condition. So again, these are all things you're probably doing already, and this is what the standards are asking and setting as a baseline. They also talk around specific things for each livestock species. So there's ones for cattle, standards for sheep, and standards for goats. That they have specific sections in relation to husbandry. So for cattle, you obviously have specific husbandry requirements around what you would do with cattle, and then the same for sheep and the same for goats. So that they're species specific for a reason, because you don't handle them all the same. And then there's also kind of requirements around breeding management, calving, intensive operations like your feedlotting, dairy management, and then humane euthanasia as well at the end to make sure that that end of life is managed on property. The standards, again, free. You can download them and we will send you a link to them. It is a requirement to have access to them. So if you do get audited, you should be able to show someone that you have access to them. But we do have free e-learning on these standards that go into each specific thing and what they mean, and the guidelines that kind of support how to do those things to meet the standards are available. So the Animal Welfare Management Plan is based on the animal welfare standards. We have built a tool within LPA and within the database to make it really easy and suit your operation as well. So it asks you kind of what species you have to make sure that you're getting the right questions and the right standards. And then you can also select what husbandry activities you're doing on your livestock, because not everyone does the same thing on their property. And then that means that you'll only get shown the standards that are relevant to your operation, but also only have to answer questions and demonstrate how you do those activities. So it streamlines it based on your specific situation. And again, it aligns to the standards. So we're only asking you to say how you meet the standards, and we provide all the guidelines and all the guidance there for you to help prompt you, because it can be a little bit overwhelming trying to think of all the things that you're doing. So we've got it all there sitting ready for you to use as well. Now, in terms of the specifics of the management plan, we're going to play a short video that just demonstrates how easy it is or how to do it online.
There's a new animal welfare tool for the Livestock Production Assurance program. The Animal Welfare Management Plan makes LPA accreditation and re-accreditation clearer about ensuring good animal health and welfare outcomes. There will be some extra questions in the self-assessment when you renew accreditation every 2 years, but the underlying requirements haven't changed, and there's no extra cost. With Livestock Production Assurance, Australia's cattle, sheep and goat producers already commit to Australia's animal welfare standards. The new tool gives consumers and our markets a stronger basis for preferring our red meat. So let's see how it works. Log in to your LPA account. Click on Record Keeping at the bottom of the screen. Or just go to Account and select Record Keeping. Choose the Animal Welfare Management Plan option. Confirm your on-farm activities, and from here the questions are tailored specifically for the livestock you work with. If you produce sheep, you won't get questions about cattle or goats. You'll be asked to read the relevant animal welfare standards for each section and answer questions with either multiple choice or free text answers. Guidance and links are at each question to help. Once you've completed it, an Animal Welfare Management Plan document will be created. You can then download it as a PDF, but it'll also be stored in your LPA account for easy access and updating. It'll be available anytime via Record Keeping. The Animal Welfare Plan tool is available for completion anytime in your LPA account. You'll need to do this as part of your re-accreditation, and it'll form part of LPA audits. The Livestock Production Assurance program is all about improving transparency and traceability for Australian red meat, and backs the standards we uphold in Australia, including animal welfare. The Animal Welfare Management Plan gives our markets more confidence that our producers are delivering animal welfare to the best standards in the world. For more information, head to the Animal Welfare page on the Integrity Systems website, integritysystems.com.au/on-farm assurance/animal welfare.
That's just an overview of how to complete the animal welfare management plan. It's not super scary. So if you do go back in, or you're going into LPA to complete your renewal and LPA accreditation, it'll automatically populate as part of the steps you do to complete it. So it's all there. You probably won't even notice that you're doing it. If you want to jump on and do it earlier, like the video said, you can. It's just a couple of clicks and then you can launch that, and it saves your progress. You can come back and finish it if you don't have time to do it all. But we will get everyone to do it through their LPA renewal process. And if you are selected for audit, auditors will ask you if you completed it in the first instance as well. So it's a good one to get in and do if you've got some time. So just rounding out tonight, I just wanted to talk around the animal welfare kind of requirements that will be asked in the animal welfare management plan that are set in those standards. So I did say it's things you're probably doing all day, every day in caring for your livestock. So, you know, how do you ensure that they have access to feed and water that's suitable for their needs? It's really simple things, you know, ensuring that they're with their friends, if they're mobs, that they're socially, you know, around the animals that they want to be. That if you do have facilities and equipment, so your yards, your loading ramps, any equipment you use for husbandry activities, that they're all in good condition and minimising the stress of animals when you're handling them. Also, if you do house animals or you have them inside for periods of time, that they've got appropriate space to do their normal activities is also really important. So these are basic things that happen every day that you're probably already doing. Also, how you handle your livestock. So, you know, things like low stress handling is also really important to consider as part of your animal welfare management plan. Again, husbandry activities specific to what you're doing and your livestock. To minimise pain, injury and disease. So common sense approaches to hygiene. When you complete those activities, training staff, or if you're using contractors, to make sure that they're appropriately skilled and knowledge, and pain relief if you do have access to that and it's necessary for those procedures. There's other things you can consider too as part of your animal welfare around, you know, you probably selected the right breed for your property as well, which is equally important in ensuring they're going to thrive in that environment. Things like monitoring for diseases and knowing what's endemic in your local environment is also important. So if there's spikes in certain diseases, you know, you could be vaccinating against them, for example. Monitoring livestock is always going to be your bottom line in terms of how frequently you're checking on them and making sure they're okay. So you're doing this all day, every day anyway, so making sure that you've got that in there as your key tool, that if something doesn't look right, you're doing something about it. So it's all very straightforward. The other bit that we'll talk about, and I'll just talk a little bit more about, is also the protection from extreme weather, natural disasters, predation. So that kind of fits into your disaster management and things like that. And I think it's quite topical in terms of some of the natural disasters that we've been experiencing in Australia, whether that be floods, fires or drought. So animal welfare and natural disasters, I think it's paramount to call out that LPA as an assurance program is never going to come in and try and dictate to you how to manage this or get involved in that process. Obviously, that it's paramount to ensure that, you know, in those events that you're taking care of yourselves, your families, your properties and your animals to the best of your ability in that situation. And you shouldn't be worrying about you know, us in that situation. So we can obviously help you if you need it. And it's important to plan for these things in times when you're not facing that, so that if it does happen, you know sort of what you've got in place to implement. Part of your animal welfare management plan is to get you thinking about these things to help reduce your risk in the event that they do happen. Not everyone's going to be at risk to all of these issues, so it's really important to identify what's relevant to your property and where you're located. But things you can consider in this are around, you know, where you might be able to source supplementary feed from and water, if that's a necessary requirement, especially if you're in drought-prone areas. considerations of things like when you might be looking to relocate livestock to other properties, maybe agistment or selling them off early to reduce the pressure if your property is not able to continue to graze them. There's other things like if you do have good areas on the property or an area where you might be able to containment feed, you can consider like how and when you do that in relation to what might be going on. So it's just planning for those sorts of situations. You could also be looking to segregate livestock based on their risk and their welfare. So you could do that as an early step in that planning process as well. There's other things like early weaning if your mothers aren't coping so well and you might need to start different plans. And then also your humane euthanasia processes, which are part of that process if you actually need to get to that level, which we hope you don't. I do want to call out that MLA has a vast number of resources around how you can prepare your properties in relation to floods, bushfire recoveries, and then climate variability as well. We'll send out that link to make sure you've got access to that resource hub, which is really important and it gives you some good tips and things that you can consider as well. In terms of resources, sorry, just waiting for my slide. Oh, sorry. Top 3 integrity takeaways for tonight. I really just want to call out around animal treatments being done safely and responsibly, and that's ultimately to ensure the welfare of your animals. And it's also really important to keep all those records. So it really helps showcase what you do and also helps you prepare when you're going to consign those animals through the supply chain. If we have food safety incidences or issues, once meat gets into an overseas market, can really impact our market access and that continued market access. So just because you think, oh, I really did this one thing and I shouldn't, it actually stops the processor. They have to put boxes on hold. If it's on the boat, they have to pull it back. They have to recall it. It gets very serious. So keeping really good records and then you relying on your own records is really critical to reduce your risk and also the risk to the industry. So it's a core component of the program. And also it's around getting that animal welfare management plan done because that helps showcase and highlight all the great work that we're already doing around welfare and helps us, grandstand that on the global stage as well. So they're probably my three key things for tonight in terms of what I want you to take away from tonight's information. And lastly, this is a great picture I took when I went to visit a dairy farm of some lovely girls waiting to grow up. But effectively, we've got lots of information around chemicals, parasite control, getting the more out of your livestock, animal welfare standards, the MLA resource hub. We have e-learning. There's also, if you get stuck with anything relating to withhold periods or export slaughter intervals, the Australian Pesticide Veterinary Medicine Association, or the APVMA for short, is the federal government, and that's the agency that approves all of the veterinary products and the chemicals that get used in Australia. They have a database effectively that you can look up any product and get all the information you need about it. So if you're unsure about an ESI on a product, for example, you can look it up and find it. And of course, if you do have any questions about anything relating to LPA, anything relating to tracing livestock, tags, movement records and NLAS, anything at all, you can always contact ISC. We're here to help you and give you the information and support that you need. So that's all I have for tonight. I know we're a little bit early, but I'll hand back to Jack just to wrap us up. So Jack, back to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I'm sure everyone found that very informative, and that on the back of that, I'm sure there'll be some questions that we're going through very shortly. I've been seeing them. We've all been seeing them come through, so it's great to see people and so engaged. But before we get to those, I just want to quickly cover a few things that are coming up in the future with LPA. Now, the LPA will continue evolving to support producers and ensure ongoing market access for Australian red meat moving forward, as always. One example of how that's going to be happening, which will happen over the next 6 months, for example, will be the inclusion of hormone-free assurance for exported beef to meet foreign rules and regulations. So this is going to allow Aussie beef greater access to the valuable overseas markets. So that'll be something to look forward to coming down the track. Now, as I mentioned at the start, this is the first of 3 LPA webinars. I hope you can join us for the rest of the series. The next one will be this Thursday, the 16th of April. We'll be back here presenting on livestock movements, which you'll find valuable. And then next Thursday, which is the 23rd of April, we'll be rounding out the series with a look at audits and accounts. So a couple of crucial ones coming up for you, so please join us. You'll see on the screen some QR codes. They'll take you straight to the registration page to fill out so that you can join those. And if I could also direct your attention to the chat box, you'll see a link to a short feedback survey. This is really valuable to us. So if you could just take a few minutes after this after this webinar to fill that out. It really helps us guide the future webinars to make sure that they're tailored to what you need and what you want to see. It helps us out enormously. So I'll just give you a moment for anyone who wants to click on that QR code and open that link so that you can fill it out later. Feel free. And in the meantime, don't forget for anything that you need to contact the ISC customer helpline if you have any questions that outside of what we're talking about here tonight. They're there to help. They're a great group. As many of you, I'm sure, have the experience of, they'll be able to help you out there. We'll also be sending out a post-webinar email, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. It's going to have links to this recording, to the transcript, including your Q&A, the questions that you ask and the answers that we give you either now or afterwards, and a host of other resources that will help. So keep an eye on your inboxes for that. And with that, we've reached the end of the presentation section. So we're going to just leaves it to me to say a big thank you to Elizabeth for sharing her experiences insight with us tonight, and to the team of Natasha, Xander, Verity, Will, and everyone else who's worked on this, who's really helped put this together and make it a terrific success. And with that, we're ready to answer your questions.